Jay here for Stretford Paddock. This is Paddock Live. That's Joe Smith. We are here. We have got loads of Manchester United news stories to get through, but the most important thing is that you get involved in the comments and the chat and let us know what you think about all or any of them. Yes. Make sure as well, if you're not doing already, you give us a like. Yeah? For like, is that what it is?
Yeah,
that's what the kids do. Like. Yeah, everyone used to say that to me because they liked me.
Yeah, they
did back in the day. And if you're not doing, subscribe to the channel, because if you're not subscribing to the channel, what are you even doing with your life?
Big reports tonight, Jay.
I don't like
reports.
My reports any other size.
Yeah, we've got a few things. We've got some staff confronting Richard Arnold, a sort of chat that they had that maybe didn't go particularly well. Also, this big news that there's reports coming out of, I believe, out of Qatar, that Sheikh Jassim is very close to the takeover of Manchester United.
I'm stunned that these reports are coming out of Qatar.
Well, but
I thought they were coming out of Failsworth. I thought Jim Ratcliffe was giving us these reports.
But the thing is, though, because we've seen it in the past where the Qatar stories aren't always coming from the country of Qatar, whereas this time they seem to.
You know what it is as well, right? When you see these stories emanating from these Qatari news agencies or news outlets, you look and they have like 1 million followers on Twitter, and you think, these aren't like small accounts with no one. These are massive, but then you think, are they getting fed information to try and sway opinion or whatever? Yeah. But we'll get into all that as well.
All of that.
Also, we'll look at about this Barnsley game.
Behind closed doors match took place yesterday or Tuesday. Yeah, that is yesterday. United, we won't reveal the score now. We'll match of the day it.
Oh yeah, I love a bit of that. If you don't want to know the score, look away now.
And also,
go on.
David De Gea.
David De Gea.
He's got a new club that he's watching.
Right.
It's the Man United women's team. Now there's a career move for him. Could he get a game there? Team. Well, could he play for
I presume not.
Mary Earps is pretty good.
Mary Earps is pretty good, and also it's the women's team. So there's two slight flaws to that plan. They got a big result in the 1-1 draw with PSG in their inaugural Champions League game. Well done to the women's team. Right, let's talk about Richard Arnold then.
Yeah, let's start then. We'll get to the Sheikh Jassim stuff in a minute because I want to build up to that. But we've got Richard Arnold. So this was a strange piece of sort of news that's broke, but because the thing is, the news itself is new, but the interaction that it's reporting on is actually a couple of weeks old, which is interesting.
Yeah, this comes from a meeting on the 18th of September. Yeah. Our mate Adam Crafton, who we had on the channel last week, was it? Week before last week, went down to London to interview him. He's covered this story in The Athletic today, so I'll let you talk us through it.
He's clearly very hooked up in terms of connections at Manchester United, isn't he? So Richard Arnold confronted by angry Man United staff over Mason Greenwood and Anthony sagas. Manchester United Chief Executive Richard Arnold held a crisis staff meeting last month and was grilled over the club's handling of a number of issues, including the futures of Anthony and Mason Greenwood. I believe Anthony was still suspended or had left the squad still at this time, hadn't he? So that was... there's been an update since then. According to The Athletic, the meeting was held on September the 18th with the bulk of the questions reportedly aimed at the club's treatment of women. After being quizzed on an unconscious bias within the club, Arnold responded in no uncertain terms that prejudicial or inappropriate behaviour towards female staff members would not be tolerated at Old Trafford.
I mean, that's a given. That should be the way it is anyway. I don't think you should need to tell people that. I mean, I'm not saying people don't have a right, if they, especially female members of staff, if they don't feel that is the case. But that should be a given in any business, that inappropriate behaviour towards female members of staff shouldn't be tolerated. Yeah. And if you are guilty of that, then I think you should be disciplined accordingly. It's just there's obviously this air in the club in there, from what we gathered from this meeting, especially among the female members of staff, that they don't feel like Manchester United, for want of a better expression, have got their backs. No. It's just like, they're not handling things in the right way. There doesn't seem to be this air of just getting it. Yeah. Just understanding what is going on and what the problem is and how female members of staff now, it spreads wider than that to how female supporters feel. I think the staff would probably speak for a lot of supporters when you're going, really, is this how we're handling it? Is this what we're doing? Do we really know what we're doing? Do we know the way that some of these female members of staff or female supporters feel? Yeah. Because certainly when the noise is coming out of the club, or the noise is coming out of Adam Crafton's story, which was he had the scoop, I think James Jackson had it as well, that the club were going to bring Mason Greenwood back into the fold. I think the club had massively misunderestimated isn't a word. No. That's what George W. Bush said. I think they'd underestimated the depth of feeling amongst not just female members of the supporters, but lads, like males as well. I think there's a lot of people going, what? Yeah. So this is Richard Arnold attempting to sort of calm things down. I don't know if he has or not. Just on Richard Arnold, do you think that this guy knows what he's doing, is a good CEO, or do you think he's just been a bit all over the gaff?
There's definitely been some elements that have been on.
And I will get into the comments in a minute, because I know there's lots of people who have sort of mentioned it. Sorry, go on, bro.
There's definitely been some elements that have been all over the place. This planned reintroduction of Greenwood, the sort of the U-turn on that, the dates being pushed back and slid around, almost forgetting that the Women's World Cup existed, and like just these things that don't look good, is obviously something that it seems to have been his fault. Some of the other things that are negative about Manchester United, I don't blame on him. I don't blame, in an ideal world, I don't blame how the owners have taken money out of the club. I don't blame the lack of investment in the infrastructure and the training ground and the facilities. I don't blame that on him, because a lot of it is over his head. I don't know what he does. That's the thing. With Ed Woodward, you could almost blame him for everything, because you knew that certainly for the first few years, he kind of did everything. He was negotiating transfers, negotiating contracts. He was, looking at the money, looking at the sponsorships. He sort of did too much. That was the whole problem. Now you've got John Murtough, you've got Darren Fletcher. So I don't know what jobs exactly he's doing, and therefore what to give him credit or blame for. However, if you look at how Manchester United have been since he arrived, it's been okay, with some absolutely stinking moments, like the handling of the Greenwood situation, whether you want him back or not. It was a disaster. It was embarrassing for Manchester United. Not knowing their own position, changing it, lying, coming out and basically saying he's innocent, but we've still got to get rid of him. Like these are statements and decisions of a club that isn't being run cohesively and coherently, and you have to blame the CEO for some of that. But at the same time, we won a trophy last season. We finished top 4 last season. Not that that's much of his job, but he got the manager in. It's hard to know, isn't it? Because what does the CEO do? What does John Murtough do? What does Darren Fletcher do? I don't know. But there's certainly things he could have done better, definitely.
Yeah.
The Greenwood situation could have been and should have been handled a lot better than it was.
The sad thing is, right, I do think he inherited a bit of a mess off Ed Woodward.
Definitely.
I think Ed Woodward was a complete and utter disaster for Manchester United Football Club. He's one of the reasons, he's one of the architects of the Glazer takeover. That's why they gave him such a prominent position at the football club, a position that was well above his capabilities. He did not have a clue what he was doing as executive vice chairman, as he labelled himself. So I do feel some sort of sympathy towards him on that front.
Yeah, definitely.
Because you've inherited this mess. You've got the right manager in, I believe, for the job. You've backed him in a pretty decent way, not completely, and it could have been better. Certainly in the January transfer window, we could have done a lot better. But you've backed him to a certain degree. So there's positive steps there. But this, the way it was handled, the statements that came out, his statement in the Greenwood saga was terrible.
Yeah.
Mason Greenwood's statement, which the club had to have approved, was factually incorrect.
Yeah.
The charges weren't. He didn't. I'm paraphrasing here.
Yeah.
But he'd used the phrase of I beat the charges or whatever it was,
yeah.
and it was the charges. Or the charges were dropped or something. I can't remember whatever it was. And forgive me, but
he used the wrong phrase.
He used the wrong phrase when it came to the charges, which is just baffling.
That made him seem like there'd been more of a look at the charges and a presumption of innocence than there actually had been.
It was just shocking from top to bottom. And I think the club had to have signed off on this, so it was just ridiculous. So he has dropped the ball massively. A lot of people in the comments, I'm going to get into it already, suggesting that when the new owners come in, we're going to get to the ownership in a minute, that he's gone. And I think you're right. I think whether it's Sir Jim Ratcliffe or whether it's Sheikh Jassim, who comes in as new owner, I don't see him sticking around. Maybe if the Glazers stick around, he gets to keep his job. I don't see it happening.
Yeah, I don't necessarily even think that's his fault or his doing. You would just, if you're the new owner, you're going to bring in a new CEO, aren't you? Unless it's someone like David Gill or someone with a great reputation and a lot of experience, you might say, actually, you're the exact person I need to stay, who can be the bridge between the old system, the old successful system, and me, the newcomer. If that had happened, if the takeover if the Glazers had sold Man United in, let's say, 2010, I doubt the new owners would have wanted to get rid of David Gill. But he doesn't have the cachet or the track record or the experience for someone to go, we've got to keep Richard Arnold there because of everything he's done. He's not been here for very long, and he's done some things that seem okay, but he's certainly not been so great that, Sheikh Jassim's going to want to keep him.
Philip Lopez in a super chat has been a member of the academy for 34 months. For 34 months. Says Sancho is just another Memphis Depay. We should just let him go. Yeah, there's reports out today that Jadon Sancho is open to a move in January, but hasn't given up on his United career. possibly with a new manager in the summer, if there's a new manager in place, which just stinks that, doesn't it? Sam Smith says, maybe close or almost, just can't anymore. Crying emoji. Tabasco C says, sack them. I use ChatGP, says Beckham just promoting himself. Lol, there's obviously David Beckham being sort of mentioned as part of the Qatari takeover, maybe being an ambassador. United Till I Die says, I'm more concerned how they handled the De Gea situation. John O'Callaghan says, fan channels are poisoning the fan base. The best thing to do, if you believe that, John, is just not to watch him, trust me. Right, let's talk about the takeover.
Yes.
Let's talk about this latest news. Sheikh Jassim here.
Yeah.
We've got a story here. I'll let you talk us through it.
Yeah, so this is from the Daily Express, but they're reporting other reports, so they're kind of bringing it to the British press. So this is the news that Sheikh Jassim Manchester United takeover is very close, according to reports. Sheikh Jassim bin Hamad Al Thani is on the brink of a Manchester United takeover, almost 1 year after the Glazers put the club up for sale. Pardon me. According to reports, the Qatari Royal has reportedly beaten competition from Sir Jim Ratcliffe, and other minority investors to near a historic deal. According to Qatari outlet Al Qas TV Sports, Sheikh Jassim is very close to completing a takeover. Murmurs in Qatar and England both suggest that Sheikh Jassim is in the driving seat behind the scenes.
First of all, I'd like to apologise for Seth Smith, for calling him Sam Smith.
Yep.
And he's even come back in a super chat to correct me there. Forgive me there, Seth. I've just got Sam Smith, on the brain, money on my mind. So the difficulty here, right? I mean, I'm always quite wary when you see things like murmurs in a news story, and obviously Qatari outlet A-Class or Al Qas TV Sports. Now, we've seen one of the reporters from there who, again, has a massive following on Twitter. I think it's about 240,000 followers. But he's been putting out a lot of misinformation over the last few months where he's gone, it's going to happen, it's close, any day now or whatever, and it hasn't happened. So it's difficult to sort of be too confident that this is any different. But there were reports, weren't there, I think a few weeks ago, from, I think it was Custis in the Sun or someone, hashtag don't buy the Sun, saying that it was going to be done in mid-October. So people looking and going, okay, well, this is mid-October. Is that connected to this? I'm sceptical, I'll be honest with you, because we've been here before. Do you remember when we had it a few months ago, or a month a bit ago, when it all started from like a Twitter account with like 300 followers?
Yeah, but that was then reported by a Qatari outlet that had, I think, 1 million followers. But they reported it as though it was fact.
Yeah, and then it was like, actually, if you follow the thread of where this news came from, it came back to some kid in his bedroom in Cardiff or something. Yeah. So I'm always wary. I mean, you would expect something to happen sooner or later. It's been 11 months. We heard that Sir Jim Ratcliffe had offered this 25% deal where he was going to buy that as a first step to buying the entirety of the club. Yeah. You know that Sheikh Jassim wants 100% of the club. I mean, where do you stand on this, Joe? What are your thoughts?
I think in terms of the reliability of it, I think I have this with any time there's a report that comes about anything from outside of England. So let's say you get a transfer story from Italy or about an Italian player, or you get a transfer story from Spain or Germany about a German player or a Spanish player. I inherently think it's more reliable than the equivalent British version of that story because I've lived in England, I know pretty much which newspapers you can trust, which journalists you can trust. I don't know that in Qatar. I don't know that as much you get a taste for it around Europe, but even then, if there's a report coming out of Uruguay from a Uruguayan journalist, I couldn't tell you whether he's reliable or she's reliable or not. So I see this coming from a Qatari outlet and think, fucking hell, it must be true. But really, how reliable is Al Qas TV Sports? I don't know. And also, the media and the press isn't the same in Qatar as it is here. It isn't done the same way as a way to sort of hold a mirror to the state or to report on things regardless of whether,
You're not speaking truth to power, are you? You work from Al Qas TV.
No, exactly. It's not exactly the same setup. So
saying that, are you even doing that in England?
Well, yeah, who knows? But certainly theoretically, it's not the same. So where their sources and the sort of the rules around that aren't necessarily the same as they are in England. And like you said, we've seen a lot of this where that one that really put me off was that one you said, where it was some bloke with literally 200 followers tweeting that Qatar's going to take over, and then that was ran as though it was fact.
And then the mad thing with that is,
couldn't have been less researched.
That was like a Monday night, wasn't it? It was late. It was about 9:30 on a Monday night, because I remember I've been here filming something for Scotty and Motty, so I'd left quite late. I was getting the bus, and it was like this sort of snowball effect. You had these rumours starting on Twitter, and then it was Qatar outlets picked up on it, who had a big following. Then you had the stock price had fluctuated.
United stock went down by about 12%.
Then you have the BBC commenting on the stock price, commenting on these things, and adding everything together, and it was like 2 + 2 = fish. Like none of it actually made any sense. But because there was lots of all these different pieces of noise going on, and we thought, well, if you put all this crescendo together, then it must mean something is happening. And then by the morning, it was like, well, actually, the Qatari outlets had gone, well, we got that information from an outlet that wasn't that reliable. It was just from this one. The BBC had gone, well, we were just commenting on the stock price and this stuff out of Qatar doesn't look like there's anything in it. So maybe something will happen, maybe it wouldn't. And it all just died on the vine.
It's just to have that assumption of, if it's an outlet based in Qatar, they must know more than us. They must know more than the British journalists. And maybe they will. Obviously, there's a certain proximity there that can help in terms of the transfer of data. But let's be honest, a message can be sent from Qatar to England or America or Turkey or whatever as fast as it can be sent from Qatar to Qatar. It's all just the internet and telephone calls and whatnot. Unless these journalists are in the room with Sheikh Jassim, that information can go just as quickly regardless of where it's going around the world. So for now, it feels to me as though we're maybe wait till we hear it from someone that we know to be reputable. And again, I'm not saying these aren't Alcast TV Sports, but I'm saying I don't know if they are. So when we start to hear it from people who I am more sure about, that's maybe when we can, start having a bit more of a conclusion to all this, because everyone else who's also been reporting on this story for the last 12 months hasn't really gone with this. It's all based on these reports from Alcast TV Sports. So, it's hard to know, innit?
It is hard to know. Loads of great comments here. Pramathayu Awasti is put a super chat in with nothing in it. Seth Smith says, Jay's thinking, Jassim, stay with me. That's a reference to me getting his name wrong before, forgive me. Damien Ahipini says, big fan of the channel, boys, but please stop giving us mental health issues with the takeover news. Stop giving this time and energy until it happens. I'm over getting my hopes up. Sorry, we report the news, and if that's the news, we tell you what is going on. Believe me, I am sick of having to come here and say, maybe, maybe not, but this is where we're at. Pramathayu Awasti says, God, forgive me for butchering your name there. Says, love Jay and Joe pairing, keep it up.
Thank you.
Jordan Amore, who's been a member of the Academy for 32 months, says, the magnitude of this deal, we will know who has won the race straight away. All these journalists are just gambling on being the first to break it. Also, there was a couple of other ones. Sammy L. Dabber says, Regulon was sat directly in front of me on Saturday and I've never seen a player more animated and passionate. Nice. Also, Justin says, hope JD Sports have done the right thing, Jay. Thank you, brother. Here we go. And Gayan Man Hung says, Sheikh Jassim is spotted buying a house in Chester today. So that's a bit of a scoop. Could be something in that. Although he could be buying Chester. Yeah. Get a bit of Chester-Wrexham rivalry going on. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Because that's a historically, two clubs that hate each other. You've got Ryan Reynolds and his mob doing bits at Wrexham. Someone comes in, does similar stuff at Chester.
I quite respect that as a rivalry. Because it's one of the few where they're local rivals, but they're also two different countries.
And they hate each other.
Yeah, you don't see that very often, do you? That's quite good. And also, Wrexham are in the English Football League, aren't they?
They just got promoted last season, didn't they?
So they actually could play against each other. Two different countries. That's a proper little rivalry, that, innit? None of this, Newcastle and where's the nearest town? Oh, Sunderland, let's pretend we hate each other. These are like neighbours, two different countries, two different towns. Quite like
that. I agree. Robert McCarthy says, without getting political, you know me, I don't like to do that. How do you think the current situation in the Middle East could affect Qatar bid? Surely this has a knock-on effect. I'll be honest with you, Robert, and I don't often say this, I have no idea. Yeah. And I don't want to give you a half-baked, ham-fisted, I read a tweet before, so I think this. I have literally no idea how it could affect it, if it will affect it. I just don't know, and I don't want to try and guess.
Yeah. All I will say on that is keep an eye on what journalists and what people are saying. So far, I haven't seen anyone talk about a potential knock-on. But again, I completely agree with you. I just don't know.
No, I just don't know. And obviously, thoughts go out to everyone who's affected by what's going on in the Middle East. It's absolutely tragic. Cosmic, who's been a member of the Academy for 32 months, says, can we get a hell yeah? Danny Shields says,
hell yeah!
Just have the crack in December with us at the Live and Sack. The rest of this off. Yes, go
Speaking of Stretford Paddock Live, we are live in Dublin on the 28th of December. Me, Steve, Jay, Adam McCullough, all of us there for a live podcast. The link to the tickets is in the description. If you're a member, you get a discount as well. So go into the community section where you can find all the members' stuff, and you can get that discount code in there, which will give you 10% off the tickets. So make sure you go and check them out. Lovely little time between Christmas and New Year. We did it last year. We absolutely loved it. If you were there last year, come again. If you missed out last year, make sure you come this time because it was fantastic. Phenomenal night. Got to meet everyone afterwards. Loads of great opportunities to have a chat with us, listen to the show, special guests, all sorts going on. Make sure you come down. Like I said, the link to the tickets is in the description. Stretford Paddock live in Dublin on the 28th of December. Check it out. Please come along. It's going to be fantastic.
Come and have a go if you think you're... What?
Hard enough?
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Should we move on?
Please, let's. Before we move on, though, hit that like button, please. Come on. We've only got 335 likes. Let's get to 500 likes. Let's talk about what's next. Wayne Rooney.
Yes.
Let's whiz through these. Go on.
We've got Wayne Rooney. He's become the manager of, Birmingham, if I'm being honest with you.
Yeah.
No two ways about it. Birmingham City have hired Wayne Rooney on a 3.5-year deal, which is a chunky boy. Obviously not the only chunky boy on that graphic. 3.5 years is quite sumptuous.
37. I love Wayne Rooney.
But he's Luka Modric's age. He could still be playing.
He's 6 years younger than me.
I know. He's sort of drifting towards a sort of Joe McGrath state, isn't he? He's got the hair and the beard.
Yeah.
Wayne Rooney, probably overall, maybe the best United player I've seen in my life. Certainly in that conversation. Again,
talking of best United players, by the way.
Not strictly United news.
Happy birthday to Sir Bobby Charlton.
The greatest Manchester United player of all
greatest?
time. No question.
The greatest English player of all time.
The greatest English athlete of all... The greatest British athlete of all time.
Okay.
I won't say that.
The greatest European person of all time.
Yeah, you're pushing it now.
All right, I got carried away.
Mary Magdalene.
Right.
She's European. Don't know. You tell me.
Yeah, Sir Bobby Charlton.
Yeah.
For me, the most... If you had to pick one player who's done more for his club or his country, there isn't one than Bobby Charlton. Just an absolute icon.
The ultimate.
Rooney,
Congrats.
Birmingham, bit of a sideways move, should you say? Them getting rid of John Eustace and bringing in Rooney, I think that surprised a lot of people.
It's a tough place to start. You don't really want to go into a team that's winning. I know they started badly, but they've won the last 2 games. They're 6th in the table. If he doesn't, if he wins one of his first 4, there'll be a lot of pressure on him already. So not really ideal for him. But he didn't do that well at DC United, did he? So fair enough. He's going back to a job of a similar stature as the one he left 18 months ago at Derby. So
we'll see what happens with that. Let's talk about contracts extensions.
Yes,
there's another one.
United looking to activate some more year. One more year Bissaka. Aaron, 1 more year Bissaka.
Aaron, 1 more year Bissaka, I'll take that.
Wan-Bissaka and Lindelof are set for contract extensions while Martial's future is undecided. Manchester United are ready to trigger contract extensions for Wan-Bissaka and Lindelof, sources have told ESPN. But club bosses are taking their time before deciding what to do about Anthony Martial. A source has told ESPN that United were willing to let Martial leave in the summer, but the only realistic offer received came from the Saudi Pro League, and the 27-year-old rejected the chance to enter talks over the move. United are keeping their options open with Martial, with much depending on how he performs between now and the end of the season. I think it's not the time to extend Anthony Martial's contract. These are all options for United. So Wan-Bissaka makes sense, Lindelof makes sense. It's almost implied, isn't it? Like when we're looking to sell a player and the value of that player, that extension year is sort of implied in the value because it's up to United whether they sort of activate it or not. So I don't think it really changes that much. It's just bizarre, not bizarre, but impressive that, look back 12 months or so, where Aaron Wan-Bissaka's career was, you would think he'd been gone by now, let alone sign an extension, so fair play to him. I think Victor Lindelof is a decent backup centre-back. Seems like a good bloke, doesn't kick up a fuss when he's not starting every week. And if he accepts that role, then I think that makes sense.
Yeah, I've always sort of had a little bit of a soft spot for Victor Lindelof. I think he gets a bit of a hard rap sometimes, or his performances recently haven't been great. Wan-Bissaka, big fan of what he's done. Martial, I feel like it's like he's a 17-year-old. We're always waiting out. Is he gonna be season? They're gonna wait to the end of the season. If he has a banging season this season, which he could do, then the narrative will change. Let's move on. Let's talk about the Barnsley game.
Yeah, so United had a behind closed doors friendly yesterday that saw United win 3-0. It was made up of fringe players, and it was in the Premier League. Sorry, it was the Premier League outfit who ran away comfortable winners. Donny van der Beek and Anthony both started the game, with the latter building up his match fitness ahead of a possible return to the starting 11 against Sheffield United after the break. Kobbie Mainoo was originally penciled into play, but his return to action was delayed after United coaches deemed it too soon for him to feature. Just worth pointing out there were some tweets, obviously on Twitter, that sort of said Mainoo was meant to play but then withdrew after an injury problem or after an injury-related withdrawal. I think from what I saw, don't be confused into thinking that this was like a flare-up or his injury coming back. I think it was literally just, actually, you're on the right path, but you're not quite where you need to be to play, rather than, oh, he's gone backwards, which I think the tweets weren't saying that, but they were sort of written in an ambiguous way, which I think could have done with a bit more clarity. So as far as I'm aware, Kobbie Mainoo was just deemed not ready to play, he hasn't taken a step backwards in his recovery.
Perfect, I love that as well, winning the quadruple. Just finally, we'll talk about David De Gea. Yes. David De Gea, back in Manchester, the Spanish goalkeeper, I'll just read this quickly.
Look how tall he is now, that's a crossbar, Jay.
That's amazing.
You see, like,
what happens when you leave United?
You see, like, Elanga working on his muscles. Yeah. He's been working on his height. Look at the fucking size of the freak.
So he's been in Manchester the last few days, sorting out the house in Hale, which is where me and Joe live.
Sorry, Jay.
Go on.
Homes under the De Gea? What's that? Homes under the hammer?
That's shocking.
Homes under the Gea would have worked.
Yeah. Long story short, he's been back in Manchester, sorting out his house. Went to watch the women's team last night. Women's team drew 1-0 with Paris Saint-Germain. Yeah. It's funny, isn't it, how it's all this like everyone loves De Gea now. Yeah. Where end of last season everyone was slagging him off. It's like, oh, don't we miss him? Isn't he great? A lot of that's because Andre Onana's having a bit of a stinker.
I love him as a bloke, and as a legend for United. Yeah. And also, I love that there's this big story. De Gea returns to Manchester. Just so you know, De Gea lives in Manchester and has done for 12 years.
Exactly.
So man spotted within a few mile radius of his own home isn't quite the story that you might think. But it's good to see him back, and it's good, some people leave United and then sort of never have anything to do with it again. And I think De Gea did enough for the club that he should be going to, women's games and coming back and getting good treatment from the club, because he didn't really see that as he left. So it's nice to see him. But
having a bit of dinner with Sergio Reguilon. We're going to wrap it up there. Thanks to everyone who got involved in the chat. See Luca Bradley, I see Phil Berry, see Matt Wicks, loads of you in there. Thanks. We'll be back in the morning with the news. We're back tomorrow morning. Joe, where can people find you?
Joe Smith 93 on Instagram and Twitter.
You know where to find me as well, Jay Motty. This has been Paddock Live. That's been Joe. I've been Jay. Don't forget to check out our live event on the 28th. And thanks for watching.